The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to TechGeek webinar series, our endeavor to empower techies. We believe that sharing of knowledge is key to enhance our skills and grow us as a professionals. With this principle in mind, we have initiated a series of webinars conducted by industry experts to give you all a crisp insight of various domains. The topic of today's session is Advanced SOC for APTs and other custom threats. Our guest speaker for today's webinar is Mr. Sudeep Das. He is lead solution architect for India and SOC region at RSS Security. Sudeep is having over 14 years of IT experience in the field of information security and application development. He is currently working as manager for technology consultants with RSA India, which is one of the leading information security solution design and security evangelism for enterprise customer and government verticals. Sudeep holds a bachelor degree in computer science from Birla Institute of Technology University, Mesra, and holds professional certificates including CISSP 2003 and CISA certification 2004. So without any further delay, I introduce all you to our guest speaker. Over to you, Sudeep.
Thank you, Gaurav, for the introduction. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would, I just sharing my screen. Just give me a moment. Should have right. So
yeah, we
I'll
are
be
able
talking
to.
About.
We are able to see your screen, Sudeep. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Gaurav. Right, so today I'll be taking around 45 minutes of your time to talk through the Advanced Security Operations Center strategy that we have, and how this Security Operations Center that I'm going to talk about is going to address the more newer threats that we see in our world, namely that advanced persistent threat that we have, we formally talk about, and as well as other custom threats which may be APT or may not be an APT, zero-day attacks and etc., which we know or we may not know about. So I'm going to talk about how these threats are really changing the landscape of how we deal with our security landscape within the organization, and what we need to do to be ready to counter these attacks that we normally are seeing or may not be seeing, and completely unaware of those attacks that might already be going through into our organization. So the agenda really would be how these incident detection capabilities have to be evolved to cater to the newer requirements, and how we can use the platform Security Operations Center to address the requirements of incident detection, and at RSA are we really doing to fulfill that particular requirement. So three topics. I'll spend around 15 minutes each on each one of them. And at the end of the presentation, we should open up for question answers. You could go ahead and type down your questions as we speak, and we'll address all of them at the end of the session. Right. So so we start off with what really was incident detection really for all these years. When intrusion detection systems were first introduced quite some time back, they were the primary placeholder for our intrusion detection capabilities within the organization. The intrusion detection systems were looking into certain patterns. I'll just wait for the screen to refresh. Still, I guess we are on slide 2. So as the screen refreshes onto the, so I'll just talk you through what I was. So intrusion detection systems is what was the primary pillar for our detection capabilities. And those intrusion detection systems were doing a whole bunch of patterns, and they started throwing off a whole lot of attacks. And we started very quickly realizing that these intrusion, there was a whole bunch of false positives that we were dealing with. So around 95% of the warnings that the intrusion detection system was really throwing up was not really useful. And once the IDS alert was popped up, we actually had to correlate that information with other information from the IT infrastructure to be able to figure out, was it really an intrusion, or is it a real alert, or what do we really need to do? And that is the time when the intrusion detection systems were supplemented with SIEM solutions, which were focusing on identifying not just the alert which the IDS was throwing up, but also the logs that were audit trails that were being generated by the end systems. So we went ahead and put in the SIEM solution to bolster the capabilities of the IDS. So we started correlating IDS logs with maybe a server log, or maybe with an antivirus log or a firewall log. And then when we see certain sequences of logs being generated from different systems, we thought, okay, this was a little better situation to be at in terms of incident detection than what the IDS system alone was able to do. What the SIEM also was trying to do was providing a capability to look into all the activities that were happening and provide a compliance report. For example, what were the login failures? They were not necessarily an incident detection, but it was complying to the requirements that many of these standards laid out. For example, ISO 27001 or PCI or HIPAA, and a whole bunch of regulations required us to go ahead and define the activities and report on them. And that is where the SIEM solution and the IDS solution fitted into the overall structure of what we were trying to do from a security perspective. But then the original cause of incident detection is still not really getting addressed, because the IDS and the SIEM put together still are missing out most of the APTs or most of the custom threats that are being that we are getting hit on. So the troubleshooting of the root cause of the failures are not really coming up. I mean, the statistics pretty well tell us that it's almost a year before we can identify the attack actually happened. So we definitely are falling short of identifying the incidents or the attacks that are happening against our organizations by just looking into the IDS logs or the audit trail logs. And why is that this case? That is where we would try to explain why this is the problem using what we know to talk about as an anatomy of an attack. Okay. The slides are refreshing a little slow. I'll just take a moment before we move on to slide number 4, where we will discuss what really APT is doing in terms of the anatomy of that particular APT attack, and why it is very, very difficult to really identify an attack well in time. So any attack, it starts off with what we call as a surveillance. We know that nowadays generic attacks are really not happening or making so much of a difference. What is happening is these custom attacks that really start off with surveillance, and then they move on to analyzing the particular target, and then probing the target. And once we have sufficient information on what is available for me as a platform to attack, that is when I set up the attack. I go ahead and use custom threats or custom zero-day attacks to do an intrusion. And once I have started off the attack and I have a successful intrusion, I start covering up my tracks for all the other activities that I have done up till now. And then I keep on identifying those valuables that I want to really steal. And once I have got all of those valuables that I need to, that I originally intended to get, then I complete the cover-up and I move out. Now, during this entire process, maybe at the surveillance layer or the analysis layer, even if I get certain indications that something is going on, I might have missed the attack, and the attack could have got completed without me having any clue as to that we were actually breached. And this is the case in many of these APTs that has been reported in the newspaper. So if during this entire time period you were not aware that something has happened, most probably you'll know about the attack from the newspapers. That's a lot of times that has happened, and that's a very, very scary situation. Because the analysis that is happening, the setup that is happening, and the intrusion that is happening is really based upon very custom-built attacks, which our existing setup, which is in terms of the response setup, really is not in a position to monitor. So we do our threat analysis, we do our discovery of what is the risk attack, we do our own intelligence, we do our monitoring, but at some point of time we identify the attack. Once we have identified the attack, we start doing the root cause analysis, we report on that, we try and contain that particular attack, we try and do damage control, and then at some point of time we go out to the external world and say, okay, we have responded to it and we have recovered from it. From a timeline perspective, there is though that difference between when the attack actually began and when the attack was particularly identified, based upon the various time slots. And that attacker-free time, I'll just wait for the refreshing, and I'm sorry about this. So the time between when the attack begins and the time when we have identified the attack based upon all the activities that has happened, that is what we call as attacker-free time. This is the time when the attacker is sitting within our systems and doing their discovery and their cover-ups, which we do not get a view of. Our idea is to make sure that this free time that is there, or what we call as the dwell time, and the time between when we have identified and when we have responded, both of these times need to become as small as possible. To make sure that the dwell time and the response time is as small as possible, we do need to have a little different approach. The advanced threats are targeted, hence we are not in a position to identify the attack well in time, and because it's a new kind of attack, they are slow and slow. The response time, the time between the identifying of the attack and the response time, that is also very long, because we do not have sufficient information in the audit trails itself, because the attack was designed in that manner. It was designed to be stealth, and hence we need to have more information around how we can have our response time also reduced as much as possible. And the other one, which is an important aspect of an APT, is that there is always a human involvement within an APT. There is social engineering which plays a major role for every APT that becomes successful. So to make sure that we have the human involvement factor factored in, and that the attacks are low and slow, and it's going to happen over a period of time as long as maybe 6 months, and that it is custom built. It is not going to be picked up by my IDS patterns, or it's not going to be picked up by my antivirus systems, because they are targeted, they are zero-day. So keeping in mind that all of these is what makes sure that it is an advanced persistent threat, or a category of this, we need to have capabilities built in which will have allow us to decrease this dwell time and increase our response time. So what do we need to do? How do we need to evolve our how do we need to evolve our SOC from the present day scenario where it is primarily dependent upon SIEM or primarily dependent upon our IDS setting. One, the IT environments have really expanded. We were focusing with our SIEM primarily on the firewall and the switch and the networking equipment, whereas the information around these attacks really are happening at the application layer. And of course there are many more IT systems that are playing a role within the infrastructure. So things have become more complex, and that is where SIEM is struggling really to have information from all the different sources of information that give me an idea of what is going on, not just the security tools, not data. And the moment the application data is also being analyzed, the volume of data that has to be addressed with the SIEM solutions is becoming much, much larger, whereas the SIEM solution really was not designed to be working at these volumes. And because many of these attacks will not really have an audit trail in place, so the SIEM solution, right? So not only is a scale a big problem, but it's also difficult to write a correlation rule where there is just no data to work on. I mean, the low and stealth, the stealth attacks, because there is no audit trails, there is no way I can write a correlation rule to detect such kind of things, right? So that is where we start seeing the SIEM solutions usability to reach a bottleneck as far as the new day attacks are concerned. So SIEM is doing what it was doing. So it continues to do what, so for example, even an IDS today will be doing what it is supposed to be doing. It still sends us at least 5% of alerts from an IDS are still real. So plus the SIEM compliance reports are still as useful as it was always. Right. So the period when SIEM solution or an IDS solution was supposed to provide me value, those values are still there. But then because we are in a situation where we are seeing more and more attacks, we need to evolve from the SIEM platform, from the IDS platform, and complement those platforms with newer technologies, with newer abilities to make it what we call as an advanced SOC rather than simply a SOC. Well, the advanced can be used in many, many different ways, but then just from for simplicity perspective, I'm saying it as an advanced SOC versus a simple SOC in which we are primarily looking into patterns. A simple SOC really analyzes patterns, predefined patterns, and it primarily analyzes audit trails with just the OS and infrastructure elements as the analysis platform. Right? So what we really need is to go beyond just the pattern-based match or the audit trail-based match. We need to increase our visibility. We need to be able to see more in terms of, as we mentioned earlier, in terms of the applications, how are they behaving, in terms of the actual transactions that are happening on the network, because not all transactions are really translating itself into some audit trails. So we do not really have a view of the transactions, and that is where we have a whole bunch of data that we are missing out while writing our correlation rules. So we need to have a bigger visibility into the transaction layer, the audit layer, the configuration layer, the business layer, what is more risky for me, what is less risky for me. So visibility needs to, so I'll delve into the visibility part a little more in my next slides. Apart from visibility, now that I have visibility, let's say I've collected all the necessary information, but the present day technologies really are not in a position to do that kind of number crunching to be able to do some analytics and find out what really is important for me, what is potentially a threat for me. This is something like, in the earlier days when we were doing MIS reports, at some point of time we thought that, okay, the Excel sheets were not really scaling up. we need something more to report on, and we moved into the warehouse technologies, where we were doing more amount of information and we're doing faster analytics. And then at some point of time we thought, okay, the warehouse still was not really giving me what I need in terms of predicting what I need to do. So we move into the big data platforms, where it was more of predictive analysis and all. So is the case that is happening with the security world. We were good enough in matching patterns of attack, and that was where the intrusion systems were doing good. Then we moved into a platform where it was not just the patterns but all the other audit trails that moved in. So that's comparable to the data warehousing scenario. And then we move into a platform where we're not just looking into the audit trails and IDS patterns or the antivirus results, but real transactions that are happening. Platform that can, what we call as, is that once we have all this bunch of data that we have been provided with, I will be in a position to work on them only when I am provided with only the relevant points to work on. I really cannot be looking into all the alerts that has been pushed to me and then try and figure out what to do with it. I need to be told that, okay, these are the top priority attacks, and this is how you need to act upon them. How do you act upon them? We need to have a platform where those incidents are also managed, because today's platforms, as we talked about, human involvement, there is legal involvement, there is marketing involvement, there is a whole bunch of stakeholders who also need to be involved when there is an incident, and more so if there is a breach. So we need to be able to manage these incidents in a more optimized manner, which goes beyond the realm of IT people. So our incident management capabilities need to evolve as well. So I'll delve into these a little bit more in my next slides, starting off with the comprehensive visibility part. What we see in terms of comprehensive visibility as of today is primarily look into all the necessary set of information that we need for doing incident analysis. We know when you do the audit trails, which tells me whether somebody logged in or somebody logged off. What did they do? For example, if there is a data breach, I will get to know from the audit trails that these were the IP addresses that were involved in a particular transaction. But I still don't get a view of what was the actual data that moved out or moved in. I mean, I might have a file name, but I still wouldn't know what was the actual data that moved over the platform. So we need to be in a position to capture not only the network, not only the log information, but we also need to be able to look into the network information. We need to be able to look into the network behavior information, and we need to be able to look into the global threat that the global intelligence that other people might have already identified and shared, right? Similar to what the patterns that IDSs would be creating in terms of sharing their attack patterns with others. Now, instead of just patterns, there might be other bits of information. For example, a command and control center IP address, or a device IP address, or a particular sequence or particular zero-day attack parameter, or what we normally call as indicators of compromise. So it's not really a pattern, but it gives an indication that, okay, this is how a compromise might be happening. So all those different kind of information really needs to be collected. From RSA perspective, we have created this whole set of tools that provides us those kind of visibility. For example, RSA Security Analytics is a platform where I am able to visualize or capture the information about audit trails in terms of net flow events, in terms of network packets, actual transactions. DLP gives me a visibility into the data that actually is moving, how sensitive they are, how important they are. Should I really be looking into a particular data breach when it is just some public information that is going out, or versus some data breach in which I have sensitive data going out. So DLP gives me visibility into the data context. And the last piece, which is the AVEXA, RSA AVEXA, that gives me visibility into the players, the actors. Who are these people who are involved, who has been compromised, or who are those actual individuals that are participating in this. It's not just the desktop that is compromised, but it is also the person who is also compromised. We need to be able to identify who are those people who has played a role into this. So AVEXA gives me a capability to look into the user identities. DLP gives me a way to look into the data context, and security analytics gives me a capability to look into every bit of activity that went down, be it in the form of audit trail, be it in the form of network transactions, be it in the form of net flow information, be it in the form of configuration information that allows me that visibility into the different data sources within the organization. In terms of once I have taken off all these data points on which I need to be correlating on, I have to also build a system which can actually run my queries on it quick enough, fast enough, and in complex manner enough for me to be able to analyze that it is a big problem, it is a problem, or it is not a problem. Right? So once what we have gone ahead and done is created a platform of analysis that allows me to run complex queries, queries that are predictive in nature, queries that can identify a pattern out of a whole bunch of activities, identify that something abnormal is going on. So that is where we have the security analytics platform, which is powered by technologies like event streaming technology and big data technology, which allows me to supplement the normal SQL queries that we have been using all this while with constructs that can help me design streams of events and analyze those streams in a very, very dynamic manner. We also have built in, we have provided capabilities of identifying the malware, the identification of custom malware as to they are doing certain things bad which they are not supposed to be doing. So we have introduced malware analytics capabilities both at the network layer as well as the endpoint layer to see if the incident that I picked up had a malware as one of the actors in there. So the analytics platform not only helps me do complex correlations, but also can be very, very specific in terms of identifying malware and doing a deep dive into the malware as it flows over the network, as well as it goes ahead and runs on a particular system. In terms of intelligence, not all of these are important. So what we do is, once we have the data that is collected from all the different sources across the world, we share that information. We share what we know in a real-time manner from other sources. Our own First Watch, which is a vulnerability assessment, vulnerability research center, where we assess based upon the data that we find out from all the different anti-Trojan and anti-phishing activities that we've been doing for years on. So that information is shared in the form of RSA First Watch, as well as the other toolkits that we have, which allows me to find out what is really important for me. So there are thousands and thousands of vulnerabilities that are identified. What Archer Vulnerability Management really helps me to do is zero down on those vulnerabilities that are applicable to my organization, and then focus the correlation around what is really applicable to me. So that intelligence helps me prioritize, helps me identify if they are important for me or if they are not important for me. And ultimately, when we have the intelligence in place, we do our incident management. Right? So I'm on slide number 14, I just hope that the slides have been transitioning correctly. On slide 14,
Yeah. Sudeep, are you
we
there?
are talking about how I can do my incident technology. For example, slide number 14. Hello, Gaurav?
Yeah, you are on slide number 14. The voice is a bit disturbed. Can you? Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, it's fine now. Please.
Am I okay now? Okay, sure. Thank you. So on the incident management, what we really want to say is that a security incident handling is not same as a server downtime handling, right? We really need to be looking into things like what was the risk analysis, what was the impact analysis, who all, we should be in a position to share that information with others. We need to be able to, if we are running a 24/7 operation, then we need to be orchestrating all our L1 and L2 resources from the SOC to be talking to the L1 and L2s of the network and the server teams and the application teams, etc., etc. Plus, we need to be also in a position to take these information and map up, was there really a business impact? Was there really an issue with the services which I'm providing to my end customers? So to be able to bring in this business context, to be able to bring in the other stakeholders within the organization into the incident management process, we built a platform where we can have all of these cases to be handled, which we call as the RSSECOps, which allows me to build the business context across all the IT incidents that I have identified, and then allow the case to be managed in terms of how the executives of the organization would look into it, how the IT people would look into it, how my external stakeholders would look into it, and how do I really define whether my SOC or SOC is really functioning the way it should be functioning. Can I report on the dwell time that I have seen in the last 1 year? Can I report on my response time? Can I report on my time that I have been spending on my incidents? Can I report on how valuable each of the components that I have identified in terms of gaining visibility, whether the audit trails were really making things sufficient for me? Was it my network packets that were making life easy for me? So all those metrics around how useful all these controls and all this monitoring that I have been doing, are they really useful? Are they really playing the part that they should be playing the part? So so this particular platform that we talk about in terms of RSSECOps really is the dashboard, is the management platform, which could be just simple IT reporting as well as the business and the process reporting that we need to do to make sure that we understand how our SOC is performing. Right? So that's how we go ahead and address those 4 requirements of visibility, analysis, intelligence, and incident management. So when we put together all of these different components, we come up with what we call as the security analytics architecture, which is on slide number 15. So if you see in this, we have visibility in the form of packets, which is the transactions, actual data that is flowing over the network, the logs or the audit trails that are being generated by all the different systems, the net flow information, which allows me to understand how the data or how the network packets are flowing within my organization. And then once an incident is really happening, it is primarily an endpoint that gets compromised. So what is the state of that endpoint? How are the malware or how has the compromise affected the behavior of the end system that actually has been compromised? So all of these data is put together into one analysis engine, and I run those analysis, I detect them using my traditional SQL queries. I can also use my big data capabilities in the form of Pivotal that we have tied up with, as well as Hadoop that we support today to run my big data queries or my predictive analytic queries around around the data that I have captured. And looking into the compliance requirements, we also need to be archiving these data. We need to be able to look back in time if I have to recreate a whole thing. So that is where I allow my archiving system to store long-term data, my detection to do my real-time analysis, and my pivotal system or my warehouse system to be able to predict that something might be going wrong. This looks like we are moving into a direction where we will get compromised in the near future. Things are not looking very good. So that is where the warehouse can find out patterns and warn me of these patterns as we move out. Right? So that's the security analytics system that first captures the data, enriches the data with my business context. For example, I could go ahead and look into audit trail which says that this is the source IP and this is the destination IP. I could actually enrich that destination IP and say this destination IP creates a domain name which actually got created just few hours back. That's suspicious. If the source, if the destination address is a well-known domain, for example, it is going to google.com, I might be a little less interested in terms of incident. But if it is completely unknown domain which just got created a few hours back, which means something really different is going on. So that's what we call as the enrichment data or the contextual data of that. And we use that data because once we are looking into that IP address few days down the line, that IP address may not have got mapped to any domain at that point of time when I'm doing analysis. So it becomes important that I do enrichment of that IP address with the context at that point of time. Similarly, like a desktop IP address needs to have a context of who is logged onto that desktop at that point of time, so that 1 week down the line or 2 weeks down the line, I'm also able to correlate that this IP address which took part in a particular attack was being used by so and so at that point of time. Right? So the data enrichment really happens at the capture time, and that enrichment data is available for me while I'm doing my analysis, while I'm doing my detection. And all of these is fed by what we call as the RSA Live Intelligence, which is the first watch, the rules that I write, the different kind of reports that I can run. That is streamed into this information to ensure that they are always up to date, they are always relevant of what I'm doing. So that's the security analytics architecture, which primarily builds the heart of what we call as the risk-based approach for advanced SOC. So that risk-based approach is what makes it advanced. What it is allowing me to do is take all the different sources of information. That is, the logs information tells me that yes, something happened, somebody logged in, somebody created a session. That information, when I couple it with the packets, which tells me this was the actual transaction that happened, right? So there was this firewall connection, and this was the transaction, this was the HTTP session, and this was the content of that HTTP session which generated that particular log. And once I look into these and look into these two data, and I see that, okay, this sequence of things most probably is an attack, I can go ahead and say that, okay, if this was the first source IP from where the attack happened, what all happened from that source IP within the organization? So the net flow can actually tell me how the attack was distributed within my organization. So the packets is what I'm just seeing at the, in my interesting network segments, but in all the other segments, what was the behavior impact of it? The net flow information can give me that information and see that, okay, this is how the whole thing had spread. And once I have identified that these were the systems that were a part of this whole attack, I can now deep dive into the endpoint and then see how the endpoint was really affected, do my analysis, do my malware analytics, see the data which got compromised, the data that was moved out from the endpoints, visualize the endpoint information as well. So all of these, I will move forward into the levels of identification based upon what we have identified as a risky activity across all of these different data points that I just talked about. All right. So the overall RSA critical incident response solution is built around these different aspects that I just talked about. We have the security analytics, which is the heart, in which I am identifying the packet, the audit trail, and the net flow information, feeding it into an event stream technology or a big data technology or the traditional query technology to identify, storing it for my long-term purposes, reporting on them, doing my malware analytics on them, doing my compliance reporting on them. And then once I have identified these data, I correlate or I prioritize that data based upon the data sensitivity that I have seen. So that is where the RSA data discovery or the RSA data loss prevention system allows me to identify what were the sensitive data that took part within the thing. And that when I'm doing an incident response, I go ahead and find out what is the kind of incident control that I should be doing, which are those systems that I should be quarantining, which are those systems from where data might have actually got leaked, and what is the data that might have got leaked. Are they still infected? Are they still lying dormant? So that is where the RSA ECAT system allows me to delve into the endpoint and look very, very deep, very, very granular into every process, every data that is sitting within that endpoint and those compromised endpoints. And of course, the security operations platform allows me to do incident management, allows me to do the risk management, allows me to have the L1 and the L2s and the different SOC program managers to be working with each other. For example, in case a typical SOC, the way we see typical SOC, there will be a tier 1 analyst, there will be a tier 2 analyst, there will be a threat intelligence analyst, there will be a SOC manager. All of these different personas would be doing different things. And all of these people have to have a workbench for them to work on. For example, a tier 1 analyst might be the first level of analyst who will be doing the event triage, who will be doing the preliminary investigation, who are there 24/7 to monitor them, and who will be doing the basic containment work of that particular incident. But then a tier 2 analyst might take all this information and try and run newer rules around what they need to do. They actually might be doing their malware analysis. They may be doing the network forensics activities. They might be doing identifying what was the actual data that went out. Right? So this tier 2 analyst would be then using the ECAT solution and the security analytics solution in conjunction to do the complete analysis that they have to do. The threat intelligence person, they might actually be going ahead and finding out in the rest of the world what all had, what all other systems might give me input around what this attack was. What was the early warning systems that I should be working on? Is the social media giving me an idea of what is really happening? Right? So all these different persona which plays a part within the SOC, they need to have this platform, and as a SecOps really provides them a platform to do all this interaction, to record all their findings, to create a knowledge base that can be reused. So I get an incident and I say these were the 5 tasks that I must do as a best practice because I have seen that in my last incident this is what I had to do. So the next time a similar kind of attack happens, I could have a platform which can tell me, please do all these investigations, take all of these evidences in your part, and then say whether you have completed the job or you have not completed the job. So we have the security analytics, the ECAT, the Archer, SecOps, the data discovery, all of these playing integral part into the overall advanced SOC operations that I've been trying to talk of till date. All right. So I guess that's pretty much what I was focused on in terms of the actual technologies. But we do understand that things can become very, very complicated, right? So there's a whole bunch of new things that I've talked about. So what we have also done is gone ahead and designed a lot of services around running these kind of advanced SOC, right from starting off with the really ready to build such a SOC? Can I really respond if I've created advanced SOC? Can I run them in an effective manner? So we have a whole bunch of services that we have built that can help you utilize this platform in the most effective manner in terms of how do I do incident handling? How am I ready to address a particular breach? If today there is a breach within the organization, do I have all the aspects ready to address that particular breach? How should I be responding? How should I contain myself? What kind of identity infrastructure should I really have so that I can now identify who is accountable for such kind of breach? How should I design and how should I phase out the implementation? So a whole bunch of services is what we have designed for making sure that the advanced SOC really is a reality for an organization. Plus, we also understand that to run such kind of activities, we need to enhance our skill set, not just our processes, but also our skill set. So we've got a whole bunch of educational services as well built up, which helps me do different kind of activities based upon the persona of that, in terms of doing malware analysis or doing simple SOC L1, L2 activities, or doing a threat analysis. So we have a whole bunch of education services designed to address the requirements of an advanced SOC. So that's a portfolio that I just talked about. So we have the basics in place. For example, the simple SIEM that we really need to do, we have been doing all this while. The platform will address all those requirements. It takes me beyond the SIEM requirements into the packet world. It moves into the endpoint world of doing malware analysis, and it also provides me the process support, the knowledge-based support, the threat intelligence support through my SecOps platform. So that's the metrics around the different components, which are pretty much modular in nature. It's not that you need to have all of these in place to be working. A lot of these could be third-party tools. We will interoperate with third-party tools to plug in those places where you do need additional capabilities. So it's a very modular approach that we have taken. The idea is to plug into those gaps that your organization might have and not rip and replace what you have already done. For example, if you already have a SIEM, we can move into the beyond part and make sure that we utilize your existing SIEM in the best possible manner. Right? So that's the summary of what I have just talked about. The RSA Advanced SOC is all about visibility, it's all about analysis, and it's all about action in a manner that we are not going to suffer from our APTs, but we really would be predicting that we have most probably are in a situation and that we might be compromised. So hunt the attackers before they attack us. Right? So that's the summary that I want to leave the presentation thought with all of you, and I'll open up for question answers now.
Thanks for such a wonderful presentation on security, Sudeep. Let us quickly take. Yes, I really thank you for taking up this presentation. Let us quickly move to the question answer session. I request you to please read out question before answering them. It will help to understand all our users in a better way. So you can go to the question tab and check out the questions.
Right. So I have a question from Mr. Prakash. The question is, we have a medium level organization and it's difficult to use SIEM. Is there a way to manage all the WatchGuard box logs? Well, in terms of managing the logs, well, there are a whole bunch of capabilities around managing the logs, be it in with your own in-house resources or in a managed resources. Yes, these are pretty well. There are various ways by which you can manage them if managing in-house is a problem. So we could export it out, or we could archive it out. So there could be various solutions based upon what is applicable for your organization. The next question is from Mr. Abhishek. What are the various aspects of web applications? What will be the best option to secure them? Okay, this is again a wonderful question in terms of focused on, as I mentioned, applications is what we really need to be looking at for identifying if an attack is going on or not. So along with the traditional audit trails and the web application firewalls and all of those, we have to supplement those kind of things along with the behavioral analysis that I talked about. We need to be able to identify that there was a business logic abuse that happened. We need to be able to identify that there was some application level denial of service that were happening. So yes, our idea, the way we understand is that we not only have to have our web application firewalls and reverse proxies and network level denial of service tools, etc., to be in place, but we need to be able to look into the behavioral aspects of the application in terms of usage, in terms of users, and come up with the abnormalities of that. And that's one capability that we try to do by analyzing the logs as well as the packets and the users and the sessions that are happening. So we do have a threat detection toolkit that is built in, which focuses on click streams, for example, which focuses on how the user is transitioning from one page to another. What is the velocity of the page change? So all those aspects are taken care by which we are in a position to identify that something might be going wrong and then address them in an appropriate manner. I hope that answers your question, Abhishek. I will not ask for feedback as of now. We can, if you're not satisfied with the answer, you can always, ping me back and I'll try and satisfactorily answer your question. So I would just want to cover most of the questions as quickly as possible because we have maybe another 7 minutes of this. Otherwise, I can always come back to your question. Why can't we look? So we have Mr. Shivakumar asking, why can't we look into the internet architecture than the individual level of security? Well, we are, right? I mean, as a security group within the world of internet, we definitely understand that the way the whole internet is created today, it's very, very susceptible to attacks. People have created the IPv6 infrastructure, which has got more built-in security. There's more authorization and authentication in place to identify that these are good systems or versus those are bad systems out there in the world. So yes, of course, I mean, I completely agree that yes, we need to look into the internet architecture rather than just the individual level of architecture. We need to have a comprehensive look into the entire thing because there are all of these different things do play a part in the overall APT or the custom threats that we are really facing. We have Mr. Tejesh asking, can we identify 100% of zero-day attacks? Well, first of all, what is a zero-day attack? We don't know. So we really do not know what is 100% of a zero-day, right? So no, of course not. I mean, no, it will be very, very foolish to say that I can do 100% of infinity because we just don't know whether that infinity is infinity or it is zero because it's a zero-day attack by definition, right? So no, we definitely cannot claim that we can identify 100% of zero-day attacks. But what we can claim is we definitely monitor the indicators of a zero-day. All of these put together, is it actually a zero-day or it is not a zero-day? We cannot see, but we can sufficiently say that, okay, we do have a medium level risk identified or a high level risk identified or a low level risk identified. If they are a high level risk, most probably it will indicate a zero-day attack. But then, of course, we can never say 100% ever, right? I have Mr. Prakash asking, what is the solution of IPS false positive and false negative logs? Well, verification. I mean, that's what we continuously say. We have a source of information. We have to verify that information with other sources of information. We have to correlate this information that IPSs and IDSs are giving me with the touch points that this attack or this alert was thrown off by the IPS. The IPS says, I'm seeing a transaction that is happening with my endpoint and this firewall. We go and verify that data real time with the data that I have seen at the firewall or at the endpoint or at the server, and then see the transactions which actually triggered that. So the IPS is primarily looking into the network sessions. It's not recording those network sessions, so I am not in a position to manually check that. So what I need to do is, one, correlate better in terms of having the touch points also part of my visibility, and also look into the transaction itself that the IPS triggered the alert on. Right? At this point of time, the best possible solution approach, I wouldn't say that it is a solution, but the best possible solution approach is to have all the necessary sources of data for me to verify whether that was actually a false positive or a false negative log, right? In a real-time manner. Of course, we will be in a position to do it when we get affected by it, and we know that it is an attack. But then, on a real-time manner, if I have to verify, I should have this analysis engine that can look into all the data at the same point of time, have the correlation rules, have the indicators of compromise, work in a predictive manner, and say, okay, this most probably is a bad thing happening, or this most probably is something worth doing a greater analysis on. Okay, I have Mr. Devanshu asking, what is next-gen SOC? How is it different from traditional architecture functioning of current SOC? Well, I mean, the next-gen and the advanced, and these are all terms that we keep utilizing without really making any sense of it, in terms of they're not really standard words. So what is next-gen SOC? As far as we talk about it, is we are talking about next-gen SOC which has better visibility. Today our SOC is primarily focused on logs. We try to say that, okay, the logs has to be supplemented by more information, for example, the net flow data, the packet data, the configuration data, the vulnerability data. So we have more visibility. We have better analytics. We do not just depend upon our SQL queries, but we have better query constructs that the platform might provide. So we have a platform like event stream analysis or a big data analysis that supplements the traditional SOC, which is primarily on SQL queries. We have better intelligence. We have data from all the different intelligence that has been generated by different sources across the organization, and we are in a position to collaborate in a much better manner. So have the intelligence worked a little better. And the last part is a SOC or any technology really needs a process support. So SIEM traditionally really did not focus on the process around. We did not really have runbooks that were built into the SOC platform. So our idea of to make sure that we have the SOC runbooks built into, the knowledge base built in, we have more a more prescriptive way of doing incident management. We have more view into the business context. So these are things, so at the end of the day, I need to have more visibility, I need to have more analytics, and I need to be able to take action better is what defines the next-gen SOC. What should be the preventive approach for SMB having a medium scale of security is, as Mr. Kavish is asking. So preventive approach, okay, the way we see things today, so I guess this is the last question before this thing. We need to really start focusing on all the three aspects of an incident: preventive, monitoring, and reactive. It cannot be, so we have been traditionally focusing almost 80% of our energy on preventing things. We have to acknowledge that we will not be able to prevent everything. So we need to be also be ready that things will pass through so that we can monitor them quickly and we can react to them quickly. So it has to be an equal mix of preventive monitoring and reactive control. With that, I will go ahead and close the question and answer session, and over to you, Gaurav.
Thank you, Sudeep. I am really thankful to our guest speaker for conducting this webinar. It was indeed a great session. I would also like to thank all our participants for their support in making this webinar a success. The recording of this webinar will be available on techgeek.com by tomorrow. Thank you all. Thank you, Sudeep.
Thank you, Gaurav, and thank you, participants, for a great session.
Have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you.